As always, let's turn off any other distractions. And sometimes in these online gatherings, it's tempting to have two or three things going at the same time. But in satsang, it's really the opportunity to be fully present for a discourse and an exploration of our most resilient nature of being, the very essence of the peace and the grace and the calmness and the love and the stillness that we are, that we don't know, that we have forgotten typically, and so we're we're chasing stillness. we're we're rushing about trying to find stillness. We're anxiously trying to find peace. It's just so wild how the egoic identity is so disconnected from the very grace and essence of our beingness that it tries to mimic it. There's a recognition that something's missing. There's a recognition that no, this isn't right. This anxiousness or this sense of smallness or derision or separation. This doesn't feel quite right, and we're trying to make it right. We're trying to make it right. And so but we don't know that the rightness is our very nature of being. It's in the stopping. Stop. Where are you going? That's always the invitation, is to stop. I love the teaching that says what we're seeking is not ahead of us, to be found, to be created. It's behind us. It's what we already are. Stop, fall back, rest in the very grace of our being. I'm reminded of Papa G, a wonderful teacher, who was the teacher of many contemporary teachers. Papa G is passed now. But he was the teacher of Gangaji, a wonderful contemporary teacher, of Muji, another contemporary teacher. And, and and this young woman came and sat before Papaji one time and said, "I'm so done chasing. I am so done trying to create or manufacture out of thoughts, out of belief systems, a more loving, calm, true, and authentic me." She goes, "I'm so ready to find me." And Papaji said, "Oh, okay, good. Yes, you've come to the right place." And she says, "So you can help?" He says, "Oh, yes." She says, "Oh, okay, what do I do?" And she's sitting there and he says, "Okay, you want to find you?" She said, "Yes. Oh, yes. Where I need to find me, because I know that the true me is already divine." And he says, "Okay, so don't move." She gets a little bit more still, sits. After about a minute, she kind of looks at him and goes, "Okay, okay, now what?" And he says, "Oh, no, that's it. That's it." You want to find you. Where do you think you're going to find that? Stop, don't move. And Gangaji speaks of an unstill mind, a mind that is not in stillness, not resting in stillness. And it is a mind that is chasing the experiences of stillness or peace or calm or love. A mind that is seeking it outwardly and trying to find, or trying to manipulate the world or manage the world in such a way that, oh, if I can create a peaceful world, I will be at peace. If I can create a world where I'm only surrounded by and engaged with loving experiences, I can feel love. So a mind that is not at rest is a move that is seeking, striving, moving toward what it thinks is the origin or the source of love and peace, the experience, and it's not. Unstill mind, or a mind that is not at rest, is also a mind that is often retreating from that which is disturbing. True peace is not disturbed. The peace of mind, the peace that comes from thinking, okay, I've got everything in a peaceful way, and if it stays that way, I will remain at peace. That's not true peace. And so when something disturbs that peace, when we move into retreat, when we move rapidly into retreat, and that can becoming very insular, becoming very quiet, defending, that's a movement of the mind. And the third way a mind can be not at rest is in clinging. Clinging is an action, a movement of, I've got everything just right. Now, if everyone will just behave, if life will just behave, I can remain at peace. And we start to recognize the mind is always racing toward, or trying to find, or trying to seek joy, peace, love, contentment, fulfillment. Stop. We are consciousness. We are just an extension of, an expression of, or a localization of consciousness. The one, the source of all, which is already vastly at peace and rested in pure stillness without agenda. We are expressions of that. So when we pull back from the sense of separation, from the separate expression, and realize, oh, it's an expression of what? Where is my peace? Oh, there it is, just before my thoughts. Where is my peace? Oh, there it is again. When I rested my thoughts, when I calmed my thoughts, there it was. There it is. Prior to my thoughts, beyond my thoughts, always present just behind my thoughts. That's why we talk about pulling out the awareness, pulling back the awareness. I recognize that the thought forms are coming and going and changing within the awareness of consciousness, the peaceful awareness. So I wanted to talk today about grace. It's a word I use quite a bit. It's a word that my teachers use quite a bit. It's such a natural word, a natural expression of that which is often fairly undefinable. But I was feeling into it this week. Grace. To live in grace. Not just to live in grace. To live as grace. So I'm going to put out a couple of different definitions. One is that grace is the essential nature of our being. The personal self, the constructed self, conditioned, programmed, that is a part of our human experience. That is often, as we experience, doesn't feel very graceful, because it is a constructed self, a personal construct. The very nature of our being, prior to conditioning, the eternal nature of our soul essence, if you will, of our consciousness, of the consciousness that we are, the essence of consciousness, which is to say the essence of our being, the nature of our very being is grace. And it's hard for the egoic identity to allow that because it's so used to running things, because it is, the construct of self is only aligned with or aware of its own construct. It's like the dream is only aware of the dream. The dream is not aware of the dreamer. Another way to feel into grace is, I love this, this came this morning. Grace is simply stillness in motion. The stillness is the fabric, is the ubiquitous everything. And it moves into motion. It's like a bit of a river. It's all water, but sometimes it moves into motion, into a whirlpool, into an activity that is defined. Grace is stillness in motion. My uncle used to be, not anymore, I think he's in his early 80s now. My uncle was a motorcycle rider, and I can't remember what kind they call this when you're on the track and the guys who are just leaning into the turn with their knees, scraping off the ground. And he told me once that in order to be successful, to survive such a thing, he has to be in absolute stillness, doing 160 miles an hour. The presence of not thinking too far forward down the track. Feeling into what is my state of balance right now? Where am I on this track? Where am I in my lean? Where am I in relation to the wind that I'm encountering? To be so present with one sense of balance, one sense of place, and just have the attention slightly ahead, not way out into the future. That is stillness in motion. Grace. When I'm out running on these trails and it's a very rocky terrain, I'm very present. My balance, how my legs are moving, how my whole body is moving, and just attentive just to the moment right in front of me that I'm encountering, the moment I'm encountering, the moment I'm encountering, the moment I'm encountering. And when I fall, and every once in a while my toe catches a rock and I go down, I broke my elbow one time doing that after I moved to Sedona. When I fall, it's always because my mind started moving beyond the moment into thinking too much about the things that I've got to do, conversations that I have to have. So the invitation is to learn grace, is to learn, let me see if I want to rephrase that. To allow the grace that we are. Grace is stillness in motion. Grace is also stillness. Stillness at rest and stillness in motion. And what we find in this practice, through the meditative pointing of our awareness, of the inquiry over and over and over again, into the recognition that all movement of thoughts, all movement of emotions, all movement of sensations are happening within a stillness of awareness. And to rest in that stillness until we come to recognize that we are that stillness. There is nothing that isn't that stillness. To recognize that we are that stillness within which a human experience is unfolding, is moving. It's the non-duality, it's both. We are the stillness within which a human egoic experience is moving. But as soon as that egoic experience starts to move, we tend to collapse into being hypnotized by the movement, by the activity, forgetting that the activity is coming and going and shifting and moving within the unchanging, unwavering awareness, loving awareness, still awareness, the peace. And I'm even finding just now, after 10 years now of really being on this journey, and a good 6 years of devoted meditative inquiry, even last night in my meditation, a new resting in something that never moves. And here's the fun the fun part, if you will. We come to a place where no matter what is happening externally, or even in our mind, our thoughts, our own agitation, our judgment, our shame, any feeling, any emotion that's coming and going and moving, we start to recognize that at the exact same time that we are aware of, recognized as the unwavering peace, stillness, grace. Early on in the work, that's very difficult to know, but that's why we devote, that's why we stay in this practice, just to have a faith that that's possible. So I'm curious if there's any questions or reflections around this notion, this pointing. That says that really there's ubiquitous, unmoving stillness. That when we are rested in that, we can move into action. We can move into thought. We can move into action, engagement, activity. But that is born of stillness. That's the practice, to come to the stillness until we recognize ourselves as that stillness. Not as a thought, but an embodied experience of, oh, that's just the nature of the being that's always there when I'm less identified with the thoughts. It's always there. And to be embodied in that and as that. Then all of our thoughts, all of our actions, all of our engagements are born of this grace, born of the stillness, and remain imbued with that stillness as we engage. That is to live a graceful, graceful, graceful life. So the question is, how do we keep the social, political, brain racing events out of our stillness? You can't. Nothing is outside of stillness. There is nothing outside of stillness. There is only, God is the ultimate stillness. So it's not keeping those things out of the stillness. It's recognizing that the mind is moving. I love it, the social, political, brain racing events. It's a practice. This is why they call it a practice. To notice that movement. And at the same time, notice that that movement is something has to be aware of it. Stillness, consciousness. And to be just slightly more interested in the stillness within which all movement occurs. Be slightly more interested in the unwavering stillness within which all social, political, brain-racing events come and go and morph and change and fluctuate. The analogy of the sky being the stillness within which the clouds come and go, yes? If we're only enamored with the clouds and only if there's a storm brewing, and because the storm is brewing, we get so attentive to that storm, we forget the stillness beyond, we forget the sky beyond. Then we're just in the storm. We've forgotten the sky. In the meditative practice of resting and inquiring into our very nature of being, who am I really? When I stop all movement of ideas about myself, thoughts about myself, when I hear my stories, but I no longer believe them, no longer give them such gravity. When we become more familiar with that, then we have a sense of it, a memory of it in the body, and we feel it for a moment within our meditations. We feel it, and it becomes more familiar, more known, more present. It's always present, but more unveiled as a feeling, not as an idea, as a feeling of rested grace. And if we know that feeling, and we start to get familiar with it, then it can start to be there, even when the even more familiar feeling of anxiety and movement of mind and chasing peace and all the I love it, the brain racing events of life, the brain racing events, we're very familiar with that. Let's start to get familiar as well with the stillness. Because both are happening, both are present. The stillness is always present. The sky is always present, even though the storm is moving. There's a wonderful teaching that says, if you imagine looking up into a cloudy sky, and if all you see is clouds, you might just be totally identified with the clouds. But it's simply a choice to remember, beyond the clouds there's sky. Oh yeah, there. I don't have to be just in the dark of the clouds. Oh yes, there's sky. And what if there was a little opening in the clouds and you could just see a little sky? You could just see just a little bit of sky. Enough. That's enough. That's what happens in our meditation. We get a little moment, a little spark of stillness, of grace, peace. And we start to recognize that is a glimmer of the vast, endless peace, the vast, endless stillness, the vast, endless love. So you could see that little hole of in the clouds and see some sky, and you don't in that moment go, well, there's only that much sky. Wow, today there's only that much sky. Fascinating. Where'd the rest of the sky go? Today it's just this little pancake-sized piece of sky. So the rest of the sky must not exist. But we don't. We know it's there because we've seen it so much. When there aren't clouds, we know it's there. That's why we have a meditation practice. So that we're so familiar with the stillness and the peace that even when the mind is covering it with all of its brain racing events, when it's focused only on the brain racing events, that we might take a moment and go to our breath and know those are just brain racing events, and that's just my brain racing, and that is all occurring within the unwavering stillness of consciousness, which is what we are. So we don't keep those brain racing events out of our stillness. We don't even keep our thoughts out of the stillness. There's nothing that can occur outside of the stillness. We just recognize them both and simply be just that much more interested in the stillness. Noticing the events, noticing the activity, noticing the feelings, noticing the anger, the pain, the derision, any of it, noticing any of it from the knowing of ourselves as stillness. Curiosity is a wonderful thing. You can sit in your meditation, or you can at any time during the day and watch your own mind, your own racing mind, and just marvel at it. Just watch it. Go, oh my God. Woo, baby. I am feeling anxious today. I am not feeling anxious. I am awareness. Noticing. I am stillness. Noticing the movement of anxiousness within my mind. I am awareness. I am stillness. I am grace. Noticing the movement of my mind. Woo, baby, man, my mind is racing about today. It's a yes and experience. Any other questions, inquiries, and does that address? Does that help a little bit? Yeah, you don't have to get, because that will be crazy making. To try to keep the brain racing events out of the stillness, to keep our mind out of the stillness, that's really, really, really gonna be just going to cause more anxiety and stress and movement of mind. When we initially sit and move toward quiet, the brain is typically, especially early on in a meditation, very active. The idea is not to empty the mind of thoughts. The idea is simply to recognize that all thoughts are empty. They're just thoughts. Brain habits. Where are they coming from? The mind is making them up. And when we're so enamored with our own constant thoughts, we can't hear the word of God. We can't hear the calling of our own soul. We can't hear our very core nature of being. Because we think the thoughts are so real. They have such substance. And so we wrestle with them and try to push them out of the way and try to get them to stop. And that's just empowering the activity of mind. And the mind is a very efficient thing. And it will stop doing what doesn't work. So let it throw all these thoughts and feelings and habits of mind and judgments and assessments and all the ways that we name the world and name our experience, and this is good and that is bad and that is right and that is wrong, and all the ways that we color our experience with our conditioning. When we'll still hear that for a long time, but when we just stop believing it because we see it for what it is, thoughts, like, why am I letting this vaporous, these thought forms to run everything? I'm making them up out of my conditioning, out of my habit, out of my dream, out of my story. So when we stop engaging them so much and just watch them and witness them from stillness, the brain, the mind will stop trotting them out there so often because it's not efficient, it's not effective, it's not working anymore. The brain tends to stop doing things that don't work anymore. I think one other thing that this brings up for this morning is embodiment. This is taking things a bit further down the line, but it's kind of nice to know where we're going, if you will, in this journey of awakening true self-realizing. Embodiment of that stillness. Of the stillness in motion, which is grace. The embodiment of the pure, still, loving presence of awareness. What does it mean to say embodied? Personal development is a really, really, really beautiful, powerful, necessary dynamic of our maturity. To mature the personal identity, which is again a constructed in our minds. Not necessarily a bad thing, it's just that we give it way too much weight and we think that it's the only self that there is. But the personal development, it includes things like a gratitude practice, to remember to be gracious. And in that moment, to have a feeling of graciousness, a calming, a peace, and it becomes a feeling that we become more familiar with. To remember to be kind. To remember to be less harsh with our judgments of self and others. So that when we feel that judgment or that harshness or that hate or that anger that is so alive in culture nowadays, it's just watching people scream and yell at each other and insult each other and demean each other. To notice it, personal development is to notice that. And then typically what is happening is we have to go through a series of a few thought exercises. I use the example of somebody cutting you off on the road. And the feeling of hatred toward that individual that can come up. The judgment, the derision, the sense of separation. And then we might, in that moment, remember, we know that doesn't feel good. So that's the first step. It doesn't feel good. This feels diminishing. It feels disempowering. It feels small and petty. And I've done enough personal development to recognize I don't want to be that guy or that woman. I don't want to be that person. So we then jump through a few little thought exercises. Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. They just cut me off. I don't know what's going on in their life. I don't need to be so judgmental. They might have an emergency. I don't know. Maybe they're just having a bad day. I don't have to be so judgmental. Let me move back into some compassion and some grace. Hey, awesome. A beautiful practice. Beautiful. Or somebody has just said something about me disparaging. And I take it in through the personal construct, and the personal identity is very threatened and hurt by this, by what this person has said. And that feels disempowering, and that feels small, and that feels like, oh, but that's right. I don't want to go down this wormhole again. I don't want to go there. So we remember a practice, a thoughtful practice, a mindful practice to go, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. I got to remember this is saying more about them than it is about me. They're just projecting their sense of smallness upon me. This really isn't about me. Oh, it's really just triggered my wounding. Okay, I can do my work on my wounding. Again, valuable work. I mean, God bless. Better to do that than to be completely in a triggered reactive experience all the time. But embodiment is when your practice is so deep and solid that over the years, remember I said before, practice resting in the stillness until you come to know yourself as the stillness. When that personal identity is less dominant, when that personal self is less dominant and moves into the background, and what is flourished, what is blossomed over the years, the true self we are, the loving presence of kindness and stillness and consciousness, when that is predominant and embodied, you know it's embodied because you no longer have to go through one or two or half a dozen thought processes to return to peace. Imagine being triggered, and instead of having to go, wait a minute, I got to get out of this trigger by going through a couple of different thoughts, have better thoughts, more gracious thoughts, more loving thoughts. What if the only thought was, hold on, return to me? Now you can't do that unless the true you, authentic grace, has been awakened. But as it becomes awakened, and it's right there, the only thought that needs to occur when we feel disempowered, small, or we know we're just coming from our reactive conditioned self, the only thought to bring us back to peace is the thought that points you back to self. And it's so familiar that it happens like that. Oh, wait a minute, I'm acting from the egoic self. That's hardly even a thought anymore. It's just a noticing that something feels small, something feels disingenuous, it just doesn't feel good. And like that, you just go, wait a minute, return, oh, there I am. Oh, there I am. Kindness, peace, grace, stillness, love, presence. It's right there. It's what we are. I love the teaching that says allowing is not an activity of mind. It is the very nature of our being. And then we can apply that to any of this. Graciousness is not an activity of the mind. It can be, but true graciousness is the very nature of our being. Compassion is not an activity of the mind. It's not even a choice. choose to be compassionate, you can do so. But then you're choosing into a compassion that is an activity of the mind, and it will come and go. Choose to be you. And the compassion is right there. Choose to be you. The eternal, unwavering consciousness. Just return to that. Just do that. But it's a practice. But return to you, and the graciousness is there. The kindness is there. The peace is there. The love is there. So I say this because it's good to recognize the difference between a peace or a graciousness or a compassion or a kindness that is derived through thought activity. To remember to be gracious, compassionate, kind. Again, if that can be a part of our practice for a while, but the invitation is not to stop there. Not to think that that's actually the practice. The practice isn't to ingrain better thoughts so that they're always present. The practice is to awaken and recognize the very nature of our beingness beyond all thought, so that it can become embodied and always present. So that even when we're triggered, we recognize our triggered moment within our grace of being. Any questions around this, or reflections, or inquiries?
Hi, Jess. How are you?
Okay, if you're talking, I see your mouth moving, Bill, but I can't hear you if you're talking.
Yeah, I got my mute off.
Still can't hear you.
Hmm. Yeah.
So the moment of, damn it, can happen within the grace of being. We can notice our frustration. We can notice it and always recognize, wow, that is an emotional, mind emotion dance going on. And what is aware of that? Pure grace. So down in the bottom left-hand corner, Bill, you can click on, I'm going to mute you. I'm going to ask to unmute because I'd love to have this little dialogue with you, Bill. But down in the bottom left-hand corner, you've got that mute, that microphone, and there's a little arrow next to it. Okay, yeah, I still can't hear you, so
I'm not.
something's
I
going
was.
on. You can type in a question if you want.
It's so weird because it says unmute and I don't have the little button there. All right.
And it's such a beautiful thing. I mean, this is the piece. And then we get to play in the world. This is the beautiful thing. If we always remember, initially it's remembering, but then it becomes an embodied state. In that embodiment of peace and stillness and grace, in that embodiment, we get to play. We get to play with the full dimensionality of our humanity. We get to play with our grief, our sadness, our anger. Something happened the other day, and I was working on inanimate objects, right? And something I was working on wasn't working. It was like I had that moment of cursing and going, "Come on, Jesus! Would this thing just work?" That's an authentic, real moment here. But instead of being collapsed into it and falling into and being identified as that anger, it's just I could express and feel the anger within the stillness of loving awareness. And then as soon as that moment of anger, frustration moves, passes, I'm there. I'm at the stillness. It never left. It was never gone. That's the great, that's the freedom. That's the opportunity. Here we go, Bill. What do we do with our feelings if we are always in peace and stillness? Listen to them. They're, first of all, watch them. Be present to them. And the question is, who is present to them? What is present to the feelings? Because the feelings are usually there to show us what parts of our wounded self want love and attention. This is the work. Our feelings are there to show us where we are still identified in and with our wounding, our pain. They just want to be, like a wounded child, they just want to be loved. But they can't be honestly loved unless we're resting honestly as love. I watch my pain. I watch my wounds. I had a conversation the other day. I was with a client and I was frustrated. We got into this moment of frustration. So afterwards, that was the feeling. So afterwards, I went and sat and I listened to it. And it was my child saying, God damn it, why aren't you listening to me? Why am I not being heard? Oh, so I got to rest in the grace and the stillness and listen and meet that wounded place in me and give it love. So what do we do with our feelings? We love them. That's it. That's it. We love them. That's it. It's like a child, they scrape their knee, they're crying, and you could have the conversation and say, oh, it's not that bad, come on, grow up, oh, it'll stop hurting in a little bit, oh, that's, look at that, it's not even that bad, yeah, you could do all that, or you could just say, come here, hold on. What happens every time a child is in that state and we just hold them and love them? They go, oh, okay, thanks, and they go back to play. So what do we do with our feelings? We love them as love. Not with another part of our mind. We don't have a loving thought. This is why we practice with such devotion the knowing of the grace beyond all thought, beyond all mind, beyond all personal identification, that which is always present, so that it is so familiar that we come to rest as that. And just resting as that, we notice and love all of our feelings. Everything arises so that it can pass. Everything arises so that it can pass. Allowing is not an activity of the mind, it is the very nature of our being. Yeah. Is that helpful? Hope so.
Listen and love.
My feelings are a part of my human experience, but they are not the identity, the true eternal identity of me. It's a weird thing, it's a leap, it's a moment, it's a shift to recognize that we are that which is beyond our mortality. And therefore is imperishable, doesn't feel threatened. And it can feel like, I can't be that, that's too big. Yeah, it is. It is too big. But it's what we are. There's nothing that isn't that. There's nothing that isn't that. There's nothing that is not the unwavering stillness. And we put words to it, but they're really inadequate. But the peace, the love of awareness, consciousness, grace. There's nothing that isn't that. There's nothing that's outside of that. So to let that be, to let that in, to let ourselves surrender, fall back into the absolute, unwavering, boundless stillness and awareness that we are. That's the sky beyond the clouds. Clouds are happening, sky is permanent. Feelings are happening, awareness is unwavering. So let that be part of the meditation, sitting in that sense of moving, feeling that difference. This whole mind-body experience is happening, but it isn't the essence of me. I am the stillness. You are the stillness. He is the stillness. She is the stillness. Everything is the stillness. Localized as a tree, localized as a butterfly, localized as your soul, localized as my soul. But that's just a portal, a vehicle of the one consciousness. That's why Ram Dass, who passed 6 months ago or so, that's why Ram Dass's favorite mantra was, I am loving awareness. What am I? I am loving awareness. You are loving awareness. He is loving awareness. She is loving awareness. They are loving awareness. We are loving awareness. Expressed through him, her, they, us, we. But truly, I am loving awareness. Noticing the story of chess, witnessing the personal identity called chess, playing in this world. Be like an actor playing a part, having a lot of fun playing the part, but remembering that they're the actor. Not collapsing into the part so thoroughly, because what if it's a tragic part they're playing? And that's another analogy that's often used, we're not going to go into now, but the analogy of John Smith and King Lear. King Lear is a pretty tragic character, and if John Smith, the actor, forgets that he's John Smith and completely identifies with King Lear, he's screwed. That's going to be a really, really, really difficult experience. But if John Smith remembers he is John Smith, then he can experience the character of King Lear and work with it and change it and morph it and design it and craft it. But always remembering who he is, who he really is. I am loving awareness. God consciousness. One consciousness. Source. I am source. You are source. He is source. She is source. We are source. There's nothing that isn't that. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for spending this time this morning. It's really, really, really appreciated. Not by me so much, but just love. Love wants has every opportunity for it to be known and embodied. So let's all just keep falling into our grace, falling back into our grace, and watching our stories and not engaging them so much. Engaging them in that, yeah, they want to be heard so that they can show us the wounding of our story that wants to be met, but not wrestled with and not demeaned and not feared. Because stillness, grace, allows everything. All right, my friends, be well, and satsangs may be ending soon. I'm going to see. I'm moving into a different model of offering twice a month a very nominally priced class opportunity, sit for an hour and a half and have more robust dialogues and discussions and teachings and pointings. But we'll see. I'll put out announcements. We'll see. I very well might be here next Sunday too. Just keep an eye out for announcements. And if you want to make any donations today, they are appreciated to help support the equipment and such that goes into this love, this sharing of love. But they're not necessary. But the links are in the chat room if you desire to contribute. Blessings, much love. All right, my dear, still graceful friends. I'll talk to you soon. All right, bye-bye.
Have a great day.